welcome to the fifth part of this series with the Travis Theatre, How to Build Your Voice. This is the final part, so we're nearly there now. Well done for sticking with me, and thanks for joining me as well, as we've gone through quite a lot of things. The last couple of episodes, I think they were quite fast, but this one is actually going to be quite a wee bit shorter, just kind of tying some things up. So, seeing as it's the last episode, I thought it was maybe a good idea to just quickly think about endings of our stories and how different endings can be representative of the voice that we have in our work and how we make work. So, I was trying to think of all the different types of endings, and I kind of broke it down to happy endings, sad endings, brutal endings, desolate endings, and lonely endings. And they were just some of the kind of very quickly, just off the top of the head, things I'd seen, and I thought those are how some stories end. But endings obviously have a very particular role, just as being the end of the action, the kind of summation of everything that's happened, the tying up of loose ends. There is other things that an ending is doing. So an ending must be the final action of your play, that the audience can imagine no other alternative. Now, that was a quote from Robert McKee, which has been poorly paraphrased by myself. But so the ending has to be something that there has to be kind of no other way that we can get there, no other thing that can happen. It has to be inevitable, but at the same time, highly unexpected by the audience. And endings are hard. I find endings super hard, unless it is I've had that in my mind the entire way through. So unless it's already been a thing I've been thinking of to get to that last point, to find a way to tie everything up in a good, in a subjectively good way, is so hard. But I think what we need to remember is that endings can be part of our voice. Now, maybe there's a particular way that you like to leave people on the stage, or perhaps you would like to leave us in a particular place. It's just you will probably have go-to ways that you like to come to something, or maybe it's about spectacle and shock, and that is how you want to make work and present it, and that's fine. But just think about an ending's relation to the sections that come before it, how it is tying up the action of the previous scenes, and I think the most important thing I can think of is how it makes audiences feel. So think about kind of where, obviously when the lights come up, you've got people leaving a venue, or the engagement with the performance is finishing. What is that kind of lasting effect that you're going to have on people? Because again, that's another element to your ending that is going to play into how your voice as an artist is received. And I would say that how well you do what you want to do, the effect you want to cause, will be a reason for people to re-engage with the ways that you want to make work and tell the stories that you want to tell. Whenever you read plays, whenever you're going to see them, consider what the person who's written it has done and chosen to do, and how they've chosen to do it. I think it's very easy to kind of think of things, not very easy, but you think of things as a whole and how you experience it. But think about the last 5 minutes, or 5-10 minutes maybe, of how the different threads have then come together at the end to then before we can leave, and how you can use the tone, the mood of your own endings to inform your audience's reaction and enjoyment, and that's a really useful thing to think of. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about in this episode was how your voice might change, what it is that can kind of cause that. But before we get there, just have a wee quick chat about editing. So, editing obviously is such a huge part of your writing process, and is about and can be really difficult. But the best way I think to think of it in relation to this workshop is the distillation of your voice. So it's about making the ways that you do things really scream, and that's an interesting thing to focus on. So, as we've spoken about before, being super concise when you're going through your work, thinking about every line, every action, every kind of is everything active? What is every single thing that you've put on the page? What exactly is it doing? And making sure through your editing process that those things are doing what they need to do, what you want them to do. I do it. I was going to show you a way. Like I won't tell you what it's for. I probably won't even give you time to look at it. But my editing process is a bit of a mess. I write down things I need to do. Usually have a note at the top telling myself how ridiculous it's taking me to work on it. And then I just write down every single thing as I'm reading the play and then scratching it out. Someone once kind of described to me an editing process is like panning for gold. So that's what we talked about right at the first episode. I think it was about when your dump draft or burn draft is 0.0 or whatever, that actually what an editing process is about finding the gold, the really good bits, and highlighting those and building around it. And that for me is just reading it, printing it out, reading a new draft, scratching away, writing new bits in, building, layering, and over the series of about 4 or 5 drafts is when I'll have something that is what I want people to see, at least initial, like that kind of initial view, or the people I trust, as we've said as well, finding your tribe. But that kind of for me is slow. Other people do it from memory, which I find incredible. So if that's you, then good on you. But that's certainly not the way I do it. But some of the things that might change your voice moving forward, these are things that happen organically. I don't think you can always force them. Sometimes there are certain things that might happen that will cause a change in your voice. And it's about kind of going with that, going with the flow. And like your editing process, you're going to constantly find new things that excite you and engage you and that you feel you want to share with others. But some of the things I think kind of change people's voices, the experience of seeing your work in front of people is a huge part of that. You've written something, you spent a lot of time kind of doing that, wanting to engage people. Actually hearing how people take that on is, well, on one hand, great, because that's what you want to do. You want people to respond to what you've done. And then you'll learn the things that aren't work, or the things that you need to tighten up or polish a wee bit. And that's all part of the process. And over time, those sensibilities will change, and you should just go with it. Understanding, as I said, how audiences react to your work, but also I think how you yourself begin to react as I think I started writing plays when I was at university, so that's probably about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. And when I go back, not only the things I want to look at and write about have changed, but also the way that the people say. There may be an element of a different type of maturity or consideration, and these things just develop over time. But what will happen is when you see your own work, especially if it's, if you're fortunate enough to have a long production period of a few weeks, you may find that over that period of time that you will develop by seeing the work multiple times and seeing new things within that you want to explore and expand upon, and which is the great thing about if you have longer term work, that you can see those things and play about with them. maybe by you getting maybe older over time, or having been more experienced with the work you're doing, a change in the stories you want to tell, and ultimately a change in your own life experiences. I know that there are many playwrights who attribute becoming a parent as a big part in the change in their writing life, not obviously just time and commitments and responsibilities, but rather the subject matter that they want to talk about totally changes. Grief, I mean, is a very well-known impetus for the change in the stories that people want to tell. And I can imagine lots of other different experiences would be as well. So these are things to think about, and kind of going along with that, I think, and using some of this stuff within your work is a good idea. At the same time, obviously, I think making sure to take care of yourself, and also kind of go easy on yourself sometimes as well with maybe your output, which in the last couple of years, as I said, for myself, has been really difficult. But I think we'll all hopefully now start to be able to engage again, which is a good thing. But think of your voice as a journey. Think of it as something that is changing, that will develop layers as you continue to write, and you will acquire new things, and you'll let go of old things, and maybe you'll come back to them again, or you'll want to redevelop your voice in a different way. That's totally fine. Now, I've got an exercise I want you to do, the last one, and then we'll kind of tie up at the end. But if you could have a look at one of your previous pieces of writing again, but this time something older. Now, if that's not theatre, then that's fine, but preferably if it is a piece of theatre, that would be better. But if you look at an old piece of writing, and don't worry, obviously we're not going to be able to share it, so we're only going to be embarrassed to ourselves. And which is kind of the joy of this, is that you can take a look at it and just push it away. But take a look at that old piece of writing, and I want you to rewrite the scene. I want you to rewrite every line of dialogue that you might have between two characters in that page of writing. So preferably a page of writing which is dialogue heavy, between multiple characters. And I want you to reduce every line down to 3 words in the scene. And now the outcome of whatever's happening in that piece of writing can't change. You're not changing anything else. You're only changing the amount of words that each person is saying down to 3. And once you've done that, you'll probably it'll take a wee bit longer. We'll give you 10 minutes for that one again. So if you could do that, come back to us, and we'll see what that looks like. So, thanks for doing that. Again, I hope you, after we've done a few of those kind of exercises, things quite similar, I hope that you've done it and you've found it interesting. I have a couple of questions about it. So now that you've got that, I want you to look through over it. But this time, I'm going to ask you to read it aloud to yourself. So read it aloud and think about whose voice that it is. Now, is it still yours? Has it changed much? Has it distilled information? Has it made things concise or specific? Is there anything in it that you would like to explore further? You don't, you're not going to have to do it now, but at the end, if you could just take a look over what you've done, as I said, read it, would be great, and just to kind of hear it and experience it. And obviously, you don't have to transmit it to anyone, which is always a good thing. Now, I'm kind of tying up. This is our last session, and I was reading I tried to read a few books to try and really think about what voice was, and I noticed at the end of Stephen Jeffries' playwriting book, which is really great, and it's a really good breakdown of theatrical forms, kind of conventions. It's definitely worth a read. But right at the end, in the epilogue, on like 250th page, before the afterwards and everything, there's one paragraph about your voice, which is quite interesting for me, that we've gone through an entire book of structure, character, dialogue, you name it, how to write, it's all here. But your voice is right at the end. I was just going to read some of it out because I was going to paraphrase it, and I thought, no, we'll actually hear it. So this is your voice from Stephen Jeffries' playwriting book. Ultimately, what matters is your interest in the subject. If you're fascinated by a subject, ask yourself why, and then assume that the audience will be interested too. If you try to second guess the audience by writing something you think will inspire, it nearly always goes wrong. When writers try to make money, it nearly always fails. Great successes are accidental. Be bold, be brave, and be yourself. And I thought that was quite an interesting thing to end with. Just what we said right at the start, just focus on how you want to do things, how you want to tell it, and that enthusiasm will translate over. So keep writing plays, continue to be curious, and I hope that you have found something interesting in the last 5 weeks of sessions that we've had with each other. And I look forward to seeing you soon. If you see me around, I am Glasgow based, but I will be in the Traverse soon, hopefully. Come and say hello. I'd love to hear if any of this was helpful in any way, because that would make it all the worth it. So thanks again, and see you soon. Bye.